This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Vayeitzey, Bruchim Abbaim, Parshas Vayeitzey. In the past, we've spoken about the name Ruvain. Today we're going to speak about the name Yehuda. The Pasuk says about Leah, Vataharoid, she conceived again. You know, she's popping them out, one after another. Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Vataharoid, Vatele Bain, Vatoimer, she says, Hapam, this time, Oides Hashem. Now I'm going to thank Hashem. Alkein Kara Shema Yehuda, therefore she called him Yehuda, Vata'amoid Milades, and she stopped having children. Says Rashi, oh, now she has to thank Hashem. After the first kid, she didn't have to thank Hashem. Hapam Oideh. Says Rashi, Shanatalti Yoiser Mechalki. I took more than my share. Mayata Yeshli Lahaidos. Now I have to thank. Rashi Masechta Brachos, Daf Zayin Amud Beis explains that she saw Baruch HaKodesh that Yaakov would have 12 Shvatim, and Yaakov would have 4 wives. So she figures, if 4 wives, 12 kids, each wife's going to have 3 kids. So she already had her 3. She had Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Now she has more than her share. Now she has to thank Hashem. Just think about this for a minute. There is no guarantee that any wife would have any children, right? She definitely did not see Baruch HaKodesh that how many children each one of them were going to have, because she was surprised that she had more. And in fact, they didn't all have equal amounts. Rachel only had 2. Leah ended up having 6, right? And Bill, so she's not guaranteed of anything. So she has to thank Hashem only after the 4th. She should have thanked Hashem after she had the first kid. You know, maybe Rachel's going to have 11, Bilhah's going to have 1. I mean, nothing's guaranteed. So what do you see from here? You see from here in life, people write off certain things that they feel they're entitled to. Right? People think, I don't have to thank Hashem for my health, because of course, if I'm going to be in this world, I'm going to have health, and I'm going to have parnasa, and I'm going to have whatever I need. And, if I have anything beyond that, then I'll thank Hashem. And this is a human emotion. And this is what you see from Leah. Leah says, now I have to thank Hashem. Not that she didn't have to thank Hashem before, but this is, until a person has more than they feel they deserve, or they're entitled to, there's a certain feeling of, it's harder to thank Hashem. It's coming to me.
That's what we call entitlements today. The big machlokas.
Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, in Masechta Brachos, look at number 3. Amar Rev, one of them, Mishum Rav Shimon Yechai, Miyom Shabar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Olamai, from the day God created the world, Lo Haya Adam Shahida LaHaKadosh Baruch Hu. No one ever thanked Hashem. Ad Shabbos Leah, until Leah came. V'haydasai, and she thanked him. Shenemar Hapam Oides Hashem. So you hear this? God's waiting, how many years is that? 2,000 years. No? Adam HaRishon never said thank you. Shem never said thank you. Noach never said thank you.
But that's not true.
Abraham?
That's not true.
Never thanked Hashem? Yitzchak? Did he? Depends who said that. Did Moshe Rabbeinu say it? Did Adam say it?
Yeah, Adam said. Adam said Mizmashili.
So it's very...
No one brought a carbon, isn't that how it does?
So a very strange
Gemara.
The Gemara says nobody thanked Hashem until Leah. Leah was the first person to thank Hashem. How do we understand that? No one. What about Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem? Or what about Baruch Hashem Elokei Adonai Avraham? Right? So you say, well, maybe they said Baruch, but they didn't say Haida. What's the difference? So the Be'er Basada, one of the commentary, what we call a super commentary, one of the commentaries on Rashi explains, L'fi ha'cheshbon ha'magi ala, according to the calculation that she should deserve, not la yoyse meharoila. She took more than necessary. V'li nira, says the Rebbe said, it would seem to me, this is what the Gemara means. Miyam shabar ha'kadosh baruch hu, from the day God created the world, lo haya Adam shahida la'kadosh baruch hu, no one ever thanked Hashem, ad shebas Leah v'haydasai, until Leah thanked him. I mean, he says, v'zeh rachik. This is very far-fetched. You're telling me that when Avram had a kid at 100 years old, he never said, thank you. Right? Sheno umatzinu matzinu baruch Hashem lekei Shem. Avram said baruch Hashem lekei Shem. Baruch Hashem lekei Adonai Abraham. V'chi tema de baruch amru v'lei lashon hayda kasha de ma'hefer sheyesh bein zelazeh. So the Be'er Basada says something very beautiful, and he says the lashon of hayda is a lashon that implies you're thanking Hashem for an outright miracle. And no one ever thanked Hashem for an outright miracle before. Why? Because never in history did really an open miracle take place to anybody. So you say, well, Abraham had a son at the age of 100? Okay, I mean, he was fertile for many years. It was sort of in the course of natural existence. Hayda is a lashon of thanking Hashem for a miracle. So what was the miracle that Leah was thanking Hashem for? Leah held herself so undeserving and so not worthy of this bracha of Hashem that she should be zocha to have more than her share. She considered herself so unworthy of that in her eyes this was an open miracle, and she thanked Hashem with the perception and the understanding that this was like Kriyas Yamsuf. In other words, Leah was the first person to recognize that she was so unworthy of Hashem's taiva, that the fact that Hashem gave her this taiva, it's like a nes nigla. That's what he said. Very beautiful pshat. He says, Amnam.
Why would she determine herself to be so unworthy of Hashem's...
Her humility and her recognition of her unworthiness and her anivos and her shiflos and her appreciation was so great that in her eyes this was like a nes nigla. Well, why was it a nes nigla? A lot of people have a lot of children.
She same question holds. She should have gave the Haidah as the first child also.
But he's saying the lashon of Hayda.
She's not going to have children. Why did she have children finally? No.
She's unworthy to be the recipient of having more than she deserves. More than her share. He says, Amnam yesh loimer. The lashon Hayda, Nemar al Nes, that refers to a miracle, Vayeitzey miderech tivai shalaylam. Something that is beyond the pale of normalcy, beyond the pale of nature. Dumya the carbon taida, like a carbon taida. Sheish lahavi al Nes, so we bring out an Nes. V'zeh shivcha shalimenu Leah. This is the praise of Leah. Sha'amra lashon had hayda ala ben hadalet. She thanked Hashem for her fourth son. Ki'ilu haya davar hayotze mitiva shalaylam. As if this was something unnatural. What's unnatural? She had 4 kids. It's me? Why is Hashem selecting me? Who am I that I should be the recipient of having more than I deserve? Shatia ruya ucheda liyas ben ravi. V'haya hadavar hazeh lenes v'amra lashon hayda hanemar al nes.
So what happens when she has the 5th and the 6th?
So she had already gone beyond the pale. That was the time that she
stops altogether giving her the.
So we'll see. We'll have to see about that. We'll have to see about that. We'll have to see about that. Rabbi said, look at the medrash. An amazing medrash. The medrash says.
You look at the lashon of the pasuk. It's very strange. What happened here? Vataro, Vateli Bain.
Yeah.
And then she calls Aken Karashma Yehuda because she gave thanks to Hashem. And when she gives thanks to Hashem, now she stops having children. So it's almost her having stopped having children as a result of she gave.
Good. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. That's very, very interesting deal. We're going to talk about that. Look at the medrash first. The medrash says, Leah tafsa pelech haydaya. Leah grabbed the endeavor of thanks. Ba'amdu himena bali haydaya. And people who were grateful, people came out from Leah. In other words, Leah adopted the midah of gratitude, and from her emerged individuals who had great gratitude. Yehuda, like Yehuda. Where? Vayaker Yehuda. Yehuda recognized the objects. Vayomer tzadka mimeni. She's righteous. It was from me. David Amar, Haidul Hashem kitayv. David thanked Hashem also. David said, Haidul Hashem kitayv. Daniel Amar, Lach Elah Avahasi Mehaydei Meshabachana. To you, the God of my fathers, I praise and I thank. So Leah adopted this midah, and she had descendants who had this midah of gratitude. Yehuda, David said, Haidul Hashem kitayv. Daniel said, Lach Elaka Avahasi Mehaydei Meshabachana. Peladika Medrash. The Medrash makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Because Leah thanked Hashem. I understand David, he said, Hoidul Hashem Kitayv. Daniel said, Mishabeach Ana. Yehuda, he didn't show gratitude to anyone. He said, it was me. It was me. He didn't thank Hashem. He admitted. What does admission got to do with gratitude? Right? It's a different lashon. It's a different word. There's haida, which is gratitude, and then there's, like, let's say you come to me and you say, Glatstein, you owe me $100. So what do I say? Nah, I only owe you 50. What's that called? Maida b'miktas. Well, I'm thanking you. Thank you. I'm not thanking you. I'm admitting to half. So the fact that Leah had gratitude, what does that got to do with Yehuda who admitted to the truth? So the Yifei Tayar tells us, the Haida of Yehuda has nothing to do with the admission of Leah. This is only acknowledgement of the truth. Not a praise. The thanks of Leah was praise and thanks. Says the Yifei Tayar that in order for a person to have gratitude, the first thing they need to do is they need to acknowledge the fact that somebody did something for them. Yeah? Well, do we feel grateful to our parents? I don't know. The first thing you need to do is think about the fact, acknowledge the fact that, until you're 3 years old, you're waking them up 5 times every night. And they're changing you and they lost hours of sleep and they're worrying about you, for years and years, taking care. The first thing, you can't have gratitude. Gratitude emerges from haida, from admission. You have to sort of zero in. Yes, you claim I owe you $100. I acknowledge I owe you 50. I'm moide b'miktas. The first step to have haida, to have gratitude, is admission. You need to be moide b'miktas. You need, right? First you could be moide b'miktas, and then you could express gratitude. All the other people, we find a lot of people giving thanks. We find a lot of people thanking. For example, the Levium were constantly bringing karbanos, but that's just a general praise of Hashem. These individuals were able to zero in on specific chasadim that were done to them and say, yes, Hashem, David HaMelech says, you saved me from Avshalom. I acknowledge you were the one who did it. Haidul Hashem kitayv. Daniel said, Hashem, you were the one who taught me how to interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream. That is the point of the Yifei Tayar. That Haida, there are 2 types of thanks. One type is just a general thanks. Thank you. Thank you. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about acknowledgement. Maida b'miktsas. Rav Hutner says the word Haida has 2 meanings. One is thank you. No, I'm grateful to you. And the other one is I acknowledge that you did something for me. I'm Maida that you did something for me. In the bracha of Maidim, what do we mean to say? Do we mean to thank? Or do we mean to acknowledge? Even though if you look in the Sturm, it says thanksgiving.
Acknowledge.
It really, the word maida can mean 2 things. And it depends on the word that you use afterwards. Are you saying, I acknowledge she or al? If you say she, so you know what I'm doing? I acknowledge that. Moedim, I am, right? Moedim is I acknowledge. In other words, I'm moda to you. I admit to you. Al, not al, she. Moedim anachnu lach. Not we thank you. No, it doesn't mean we thank you. Moedim anachnu lach. We acknowledge she'ata, that. I acknowledge the following. This is a list of the things that I acknowledge. And then after we acknowledge it, now we're ready for the next part. Noideh licha. I thank you. How do I know it's thanks? Al. For this, and this, and this. So Hundar says that the word haida could mean two things. It could mean acknowledgement. It could mean thanks. How do we know what it means? It depends how it's defined. If it's defined sheh, like moedim anachnu lach sha'atahu, that's a haidah. That's an admission. I admit to you sha'atahu Hashem Elokeinu. Right? How do we say it? Moedim anachnu lach sha'atahu Hashem Elokeinu tzorchei, right? These are the things that I acknowledge. And therefore, noideh lecha, I thank you. Al chayenu, for our lives, but these are two meanings of moedim. And what the common denominator between Yehuda and Leah is not the fact they both thanked Hashem, it's the fact that they both had this midah of acknowledging the truth. Leah acknowledged the fact that this was from Hashem. Yehuda acknowledged the fact that he was the one to blame. The Taz says an added point. The Taz says that the word haidah could mean two things. This is the Taz in Siman Kuf Yud Gimel Sif Katan Dalet. The word haidah can mean two things. One is a great feeling of thanksgiving, and the second one is not just acknowledgement. Hachna. In other words, if you say, why'd you do this? And I say, you're right, I did it. So what am I doing? I'm more than just admitting, I'm submitting. Submission. So the midah of gratitude is, you know why people don't want to feel gratitude to someone else? Because when you have gratitude to someone, you owe them something. You owe them a debt of gratitude, acknowledgement, and a certain element of submission. And therefore, Leah says to Ribono Shel Olam, Leah didn't just thank Hashem, thank you Hashem. What did Leah say? Hashem, I'm machnia myself because I recognize the chesed that you did to me. And this was the midah of Yehuda, where he was machnia himself. Yes, sadka mimeni. He was modeh that it was him. Okay. Take a look at the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel on this pasuk.
So when we say modeh in the morning, it's modeh ani lefanecha. So it's not a sheh. Sheh hachazarta be. So it's a sheh, so it's an acknowledgement.
Sheh means you're back yourself.
No, al is a thank you. Sheh, we said, is acknowledgement, right?
Yeah.
So the sheh hachazarta goes on the moedim, so it's
moedah ani lefanecha melech Harakiah.
Yeah.
So according to what Rav Hutner is saying, it's like moedah b'miktsas. It's like I acknowledge.
Acknowledgement.
In other words, I have a recognition, Hashem, that this is something that you did for me. The point of that recognition.
People would say that it's a praise, for Kodesh.
It is a praise because you know what? Why are you thanking someone? You're saying, "Oh, you're the greatest guy in the world." Is that what the person appreciates? Where the person appreciates that you recognize what you did for him.
You recognize what you did?
I think the purpose of thanking is to show the person that you recognize what was done for you. The Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, let's take a look at it. He says, V'isabaras tov, she conceived again. V'lidas bar, she had a son. V'amaras, and she said, Hada zimna, this time oidei kaidem Hashem, I will thank Hashem. Dimin beri dain, because from this son, asid lemeipak malchin, kings are going to emerge. Uminei yipak David, and David's going to come out. Malka, the king, the asid leoiduye kadam Hashem, who is going to thank Hashem.
Did she know this?
Yeah, that she sees Baruch HaKodesh, yeah.
Well,
Begin Cain, because of this, Kara Shemei Yehuda, she called his name Yehuda, V'kamas mila melad, and she stopped giving birth. So think about it for one moment. Leah has many, many great descendants. We are all descendants of Leah.
Jews.
And many tzaddikim, many neviim, many malachim. She could have seen Shlomo. She could have seen all the Malchei Yisrael. She could have seen Rashi. She chooses to look at David. And what aspect of David's life? The fact that David had gratitude to Hashem. So here you have a Neviah who in her grand scope of history, what is most important to her? The fact that she's going to have a descendant who shows gratitude to Hashem. In other words, more important than any achievement of any of her descendants in her eyes was the fact that she is going to have a descendant who displays gratitude to Hashem. She zeroes in on that as if this is her most, the achievement she's most proud of, and she says, that's what I want to focus on, that's what I'm going to call my son Yehuda.
You know, you could look at it from a different perspective entirely. And maybe you might be able to say that if she had Ruach HaKodesh and she knew that she was going to have the descendants with Malchus and all of that, that's the reason why she was moded to Hashem now and gave Odah. Because until now, maybe she wasn't so thrilled or so happy. And it's only because she had these descendants that now she's saying, Odah es Hashem. Right? And maybe because of that is Tamod Miledes. Because she should have given Odah to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when she had one or two, and she had her portion. But to have to wait until she got descendants who were going to be the Malchus, isn't that a negative?
Okay, so we'll have to see. But it is a very interesting idea from the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. In other words, in the scope of history, Leah has the opportunity to view through her panoramic prophetic vision and see all of her descendants. And what sticks out most in her mind is the fact she's going to have a descendant that shows great gratitude to Hashem. And this is what Victor Miller used to say, Toiv, what is good in this world? Not what is good with a lowercase g. What is good with a capital G? In other words, what is truly good in this world? That is what is inherently good. That is the highest ideal. Rabbi said, look at another thing. This is gonna turn it completely upside down. Hapam Oides Hashem, Tosfos says, Ra'asa sheYehuda Haida Amasa Tamar. She saw that Yehuda admitted to the truth. Kein Amra Hapam Oides Hashem. So here another very interesting insight, and that is she's looking in all of her descendants, and what is most admirable and what stands out most in her mind is the fact that she's going to have a descendant that admits to the truth. That's something she's most proud of. That takes tremendous courage and gevura, and because of that, she names her beloved son after that incident.
But David said it correctly. She must have seen that Moshe was going to come out of Levi. He was going to be the greatest Navi, the greatest leader that we ever had. And you're Ish Anav?
The Naviim are not from Yehuda.
No.
You know what I'm talking about. Why did he focus on just
when we have a shiur on Levi's name, we'll talk about Levi's name, you know? Now we're talking about Yehuda's name. Okay, Rabbi said one more thing. This is an amazing Ibn Ezra. Really fantastic Ibn Ezra. Ibn Ezra wants to know, what is going on over here? Vatam Milades. She stopped having children. And now, Vatam Milades, you could say, she decided, the bills were getting big, and she told her husband, that's it. I ain't doing this anymore. But that's not what it means.
I know what
now, does Vatam just mean it happens to be, she just happened to stop having children? Says the Ibn Ezra, listen to this. Hapam oides Hashem. Kitam hapam azos. What's the reason this time? Achar sheyesh li arba'as banim. Now that I have 4 sons. Oide Hashem. Now I'll thank Hashem. Ki lo yachmai lihos li oid. I don't desire to have more. Kamaimer, as if she's saying, Oides Hashem, I thank Hashem. Shenasan li kozeh, that He gave me all of this whole big family. V'yaspikli, and I'm satisfied. Al kein amda milades. Therefore, she stopped having children. In other words, what's the Ibn Ezra saying? Why Leah was being punished? That she was no longer fertile and she was no longer able to have children? Because she thanked Hashem. You hear that? That's what Ibn Ezra says. Vatam Milades is not coincidental. It's purposeful. Because she thanked Hashem, Hashem punished her. That she couldn't have children anymore. I mean, does that make a lick of sense? Does that make any sense? She's being punished for thanking Hashem? We just said the purpose of one of the chief ideals in this world is Toiv, L'Haidas Hashem. And here, Leah is being punished for thanking Hashem. Look carefully at the words, right? When you have a reshine, every word is so important. Why is she thanking Hashem now? sometimes, when you feel that you've accomplished a certain mission, and you've done what needs to be done, and you've set out on a goal, and you've achieved it, so you sort of sit back, you take stock, and you say, thank you, Hashem, for giving me a family. In other words, it's sort of, you're concluding. You're saying, you know what? I've done what I needed to do. Look at the words of the Ibn Ezra. I don't desire anymore. And therefore I'm thanking Hashem for what He gave me, and v'yaspikli, it's enough.
How's she the one to make that decision?
Hashem says, oh, it's enough? You're happy? You're sameach? You got it. You say it's enough? I say it's enough also. But I still don't understand. Isn't a person supposed to be sameach b'chalka? I mean, in life, if Hashem gives you something, you're supposed to be content. You're supposed to be satisfied. You're supposed to be sameach b'chalka. And here, Leah is saying, Hashem, I'm happy. I'm happy. Hashem, oh, enough? You're happy? I won't give you any more.
Well, she's on a different Rabbi.
It's if it's saying, let's say, you look at your bank account, you say, oh, $10 million, enough. Hashem says, oh, enough? You're sameach b'chalka? I'm not giving you any more. What's the answer? The answer is very simple. Because we're not talking about money over here. We're talking about ruchnius. We're talking about the spirituality. And when it comes to ruchnius, a person can never say, lo achmod od, I don't want more. A person could never say, lo achmod od. That's poison. That's venom. Leah sort of sits back and says, okay, I already built a third of Klal Yisrael. I'm already satisfied. I'll let someone else have an opportunity. I already learned Shas 10 times. It's enough. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I already get up 3 hours before davening. I think that's enough. You don't want more? You don't want to learn more? You don't want to have more children? You don't want to have a bigger chilek in Klal Yisrael? You don't want to accomplish more in Ruchnias? Hashem says, you're saying, Lo yachmoid li'oid. You're saying enough? Hashem says, I say enough also. She's punished.
Maybe you could say if she knew Baruch HaKodesh that there were going to be 12 children.
Yeah.
You could say it's almost like Anivas. I don't want more of my portion because it's going to adversely impact the other one.
Elamai, you'll say.
And because of that, I know what HaKodesh Baruch wants, but I don't want the other wives to feel bad.
So you'll say, what do you mean? Maybe Leah was saying, I don't want more, I want someone else to have a chance. Person shouldn't say that. When it comes to Ruchnius, chayecha koidem. You come first.
What he says is right. You can read it another way.
Yeah.
Hakolas Hatov. She had 4 children. She
right.
Hakolas Hatov. And the word Lo Achmod Liot, it has a different connotation. Lo Sachmod.
Right. But why Alkein? But the Ibn Ezra is saying, look carefully. Alkein Omdam Miledes. That's why she stopped having children.
Right.
That's why, because she had gratitude, she stopped having children. That sounds like unfair punishment to me. It sounds like there's a critique of Leah. You should not just sit back there and, take stock and say, okay, I'm happy with what I've already accomplished. This is a very important attitude. That when it comes to Ruchnius, a person can never say, I had enough. No matter how much a person accomplishes, a person has to have a burning desire for more. As much as a person learns, a person should always want to learn more. A person should always want to daven better. A person should always want to do more chesed, to give more. I'm not finished yet. A person should.
Hold on. Oda is acknowledgement.
No, she was thanking. And this is pointed out in the Sefer Birchas Mordechai. He's Rosh Shiva Narsar Bach Mordechai Ezrachi. He points out that we just learned so many Chazal that we're praising Leah for her gratitude, and we're not taking that away from her. She's being rewarded for her gratitude. But Chazal, with their probing analysis, they look into the depths of the heart of Leah and they see, yes, she's grateful, but in a certain sense, she's also a little bit self-satisfied at the same time. Both feelings are true. It's possible to be grateful, but at the same time, okay, Hashem, it's like, thank you, I had my whatever kid, thank you, in other words, enough. No, not enough. A person should always desire more. It doesn't mean a person will always be able to do more. We're not talking about necessarily doing more. wanting to do more. That's the important. Look what Leah said. With the critique on Leah, according to Ibn Ezra, she said, "Lo achmod lios." I don't want more. By the way, you're right. Lo isachmod. But the Zohar says there's a tipcha on lo isachmod to teach. Lo kama sachmod. When it comes to ruchnias, you should desire. There's no such thing as Isser lo isachmod when it comes to spirituality. Says the Baruch Mordechai Ezrachi a very beautiful diuk. Because it says later on in Pasuk Tes, Vatera Leah kiyamda milades. Leah saw that she stopped having children. Vatikach ezopa shivchasa. She takes her shivcha zilpa. Vatite noisel Yaakov l'isha. And she gives zilpa to Yaakov as a wife. I don't understand. Why is the Pasuk saying again, Leah saw she stopped having children? I mean, the Torah already said, Vatamod milades. Why is the Torah repeating, she saw that she stopped having children? The answer is, says Rabbi Mordechai Ezrachi, the Torah is saying exactly like the Ibn Ezra. The first time it says it, when Leah thanked Hashem, in other words, thank you Hashem, okay, I'm happy now. Torah says she got punished. Why was she punished? She said, I don't want more. But Leah Imenu immediately learned the lesson. You know what the lesson was? That she could never stop desiring her role in building Klal Yisrael. So she saw, she stopped having children, and she was punished. So what does she do? She says, if I can't have children, at least let me take Zilpah, give Zilpah to Yaakov. Maybe through this, I'll be able to produce another 2 children for Klal Yisrael, another 2 Shvatim. What happened after she did that? Hashem said, oh, you learned the lesson. You understand how important it is not to stop desiring to accomplish more in Ruchnius. Leah was able to become fertile again. She had another 2 children. Because the whole purpose of the Einesh was only to teach her how she shouldn't say Lo Achmad Lias Liad. Once she got the lesson, she became fertile again. Yes?
But isn't there later on a commentary that when Dinah was born, she said, this is going to be a boy, I don't want to take another child from Rachel? So she's doing the same thing again.
So there, I mean, maybe over here she didn't want to take away from her. It's not, the Ibn Ezra is not saying that she said it was enough because she didn't want to take away from someone else. And there it was a little bit different. There she was saying like this. She said that if I'm going to have a boy, then Rachel is not even going to be like one of the maidservants. Right? Because she's only going to have 1 and they're each going to have 2. So there it was a matter of really hurting the feelings of Rachel. But here, she doesn't want more? Okay, good question. The Baruch Mordechai Ezrachi is Rosh Shiva in Eretz Yisrael. I just want to point out one more thing in this vein from the Parsha. Naphtali, the name Naphtali. By the way, the name Yehuda and Naphtali are some of my favorite names.
Yeah, it's the boy's name.
I have Yehuda and Naphtali. I also like the name Leah. So why was he called Naphtali? So Rashi says, Vani Omer, that's a lashon of Harbe Petziros, Niftsarti, Viniftalti, Ad Shehashem Hiskamli. What does Naphtali mean? So Rashi says Naphtali means many beseechings, I beseeched Hashem, and many twistings, and turnings, and finaglings, and pressurings. I pressured Hashem until He gave me another child. So that's what Rachel said. Right? Rachel was giving Bilhah to Yaakov. So think about it. From Bilhah, yeah. So think about what Rachel says. Rachel doesn't say, I daven to Hashem. Rachel doesn't even say, I beseeched Hashem. She says, Harbe, Petziros, Niftsarti, Viniftalti, Ad Shehiskamli. I beseeched and pressured and finagled and twisted and turned. Hashem, give me a child. Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. Right? Look at the time of Yonasan ben Uziel. It says, Harbe dechika istachakti. I pushed him. Sounds a little chutzpahdik to me, no? What do you mean, what she was finagling? And it almost sounds like it's Hashem said, okay, I'm asking him. Okay, here's the kid already. I mean, what is that? That's how a person's supposed to be? Right? It sounds like she's like finagling. You know, when you call the office, you know, what? You know, you don't think you could get it? What do you mean you don't have it in? I ordered it. No, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get it in until 2 weeks from Tuesday. You're not going to be able to get it 2 weeks from Tuesday? I need it today. Sir, didn't you hear what he said? Well, maybe you could try, after all, they're gonna kick you, they're not gonna want to deal with you. But it sounds like Rachel said, well, maybe God, maybe you could do this. Like, she kept on twisting and turning and twisting his arm, and the time Yonasan instead of pressuring him and pushing him. That's how you're supposed to be. So Rabbi Yerucham points out that if you look in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, on the Samachay, it says, chutzpah klapei shmaya mahani. Yeah, you gotta be chutzpahdik. When it comes to ruchnius, when it comes to spirituality, you can't take no for an answer. You have to be like a man on a mission. When it comes to a person's ruchnius, a person has to basically do whatever it takes. And if you gotta pressure and push, now it doesn't mean to be chutzpahdik to other people. The point is to be persistent. Like he says, the Rabbi Yerucham says you have to be in action. Ayin kuf shin nun. He says, Chafetz Chaim, if you didn't have this midah of being stubborn and persistent and pushing and saying, that's it, I will write the Mishnah Berurah, and I don't care what anyone's going to do, I don't care what anyone's going to say, that's going to happen, never would have gotten done. He says that when the Chafetz Chaim was about to publish the Mishnah Berurah, a certain tragedy struck, that if it would have been a regular person, it would have completely destroyed them physically, monetarily, and emotionally. Doesn't say what it was. And he said the Chafetz Chaim made an announcement. He says, Yetzer Hara, I want you to know. So I'm afraid to say this. He said, Yetzer Hara, I want you to know, you could do worse to me. I don't care. I am going to publish the Mishnah Berurah. And Rabbi Yerucham said this is a very important midah that's necessary for a person to be successful in ruchnius, where a person has to set his mind, they're going to accomplish certain things, they're going to get certain things done, and I don't care what's going to happen. And this is what Rachel said. You know why I got Naphtali? Because I told God, give me, I want a bigger share in Klai. I want a bigger share. And what did Hashem say? No. No, Hashem, please, give it. I really want it. Hashem said no. So she twisted his arm, and she pressured, and she finagled. Look at the Lashonas of Rashi. I never saw these Lashonas. Niftzarti, V'nispalti, I never heard of these. Like twisting, finagling, twirling. That's how you have to be when it comes to Ruchnias. And that's the Taina on Leah. The Taina on Leah was, I'm already satisfied. We would say, she has a lot to be satisfied with, right? Levi, Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron HaKohen, David HaMelech, Shlomo. If it was me or you, we would say, yeah, that's a lot to be satisfied with. No, it's not enough. Moshe, Aaron, Levi, Yehuda, David, Shlomo, it's still not enough. There's no such thing as having enough when it comes to Ruchnius. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.